Before we begin, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. It really helps us out.
He said I'd only make it worse. So I bought the silence he couldn't afford. The night my son said, "Mom, maybe just don't come. You tend to make things worse." I didn't cry. I folded the invitation into my purse like it was just another receipt, crumpled, unnecessary, but too familiar to throw away. He said it quietly, carefully, the way you'd tell an aging pet it was going to a farm upstate. The charity dinner was at some waterfront hotel in Baltimore, not fancy by California standards, but upscale enough that I knew my sensible shoes would stand out. I'd bought a navy blue dress for the event, 3/4 sleeves, tasteful neckline, soft material that didn't cling. I had planned to wear my mother's pearls, not because anyone would notice, but because I needed something that reminded me I used to be more than someone's leftover parent. But now, apparently, I was a complication, an inconvenience, something that doesn't play well with the donors. That's what he'd said. Donors, not people, not guests, and certainly not family. I'm Marlene, 64, widow, one son. I was a school secretary for most of my life, 32 years behind a desk that smelled like dry erase markers and little boy sneakers. Not glamorous, but steady. I made sack lunches, fixed jammed printers, kept a bottle of Tylenol in my drawer for teachers on bad days. I liked it. I was good at it. My husband, Harold, died of a heart attack 9 years ago. I found him slumped on the porch chair, his coffee still steaming. We just finished arguing about the electric bill. I'd said we could wait to pay it. And he said I was coddling Jason. The last thing he ever said was, "That boy's going to bleed you dry." I didn't want to believe it, but Harold had always seen things I didn't. Jason is 38 now, works in real estate development. High-end flips, mostly. He's married to Lillian, a woman with flawless hair and an Instagram for her dog. They live in Potomac, in a house too large for 2 people and a labradoodle named Hudson. Marble countertops, floating staircase, wine fridge with LED lights. That kind of house. After Harold died, I moved into a small condo in Rockville. It's quiet. There's a Trader Joe's nearby, and a bench where I like to sit with coffee and pretend I'm not waiting for someone to text back. Jason used to call twice a week, then once. Then it became, "Hey, things are crazy, I'll call soon." I stopped correcting him. Soon is elastic, like hope. It stretches and stretches until it snaps. When I got the invite to the Baltimore fundraiser, I was touched. Lillian was on the board of something, clean water something, and they were hosting a gala. Jason's name was on the committee list. I thought maybe it was a peace offering. I called him 2 days later to ask about the dress code. That's when he said it. "Honestly, Mom, I think it might be better if you didn't come." Pause. Sometimes you say things that don't land well. I couldn't even argue, not because he was right, but because I couldn't remember the last time I'd been allowed to finish a sentence around them. The next day, I put the dress back in its plastic and returned it. The cashier asked if it was the wrong size. I just nodded. Easier that way. I started writing things down, not out of pettiness, but because I was afraid I'd forget, that I'd soften the edges, rationalize it all the way mothers do. So I wrote it all raw and dry. When Jason asked if I could just spot the down payment for their first house and promised he'd pay me back in 6 months. That was 7 years ago, when Lillian rolled her eyes at my Tupperware and said, "We only use glass now. Plastics are basically poison." When they said no to me bringing potato salad to Thanksgiving, because people have dietary needs. When I babysat Hudson, the dog, for 4 days during their honeymoon, and Jason forgot to thank me, I kept the list in the back of my recipe binder, right between the banana bread and the chicken pot pie I hadn't baked since Harold died. It wasn't vengeance. It was clarity. Last spring, I tripped getting off the metro escalator and broke 2 fingers on my left hand. Nobody called me an ambulance. A college student helped me sit down and bought me a Snapple from the vending machine. Jason didn't answer when I called. When he finally returned the voicemail 2 days later, all he said was, "That's why I keep telling you to Uber, Mom. Public transportation is chaos." I started paying closer attention to what I spent, to what I gave, to what I was becoming. At the bank one day, I asked the teller about my CDs, those tiny, dusty savings accounts I'd set up back when I still believed in interest rates. She printed a sheet. I looked at the number. Then again, $147,000. Quiet money. Forgotten money. And then I remembered something Jason had said during his last visit. "We're looking at this old brownstone near Logan Circle. Needs some work, but it's got character. Just waiting on some funds to clear. It's a competitive offer." I smiled, not because I had a plan yet, but because I realized something. Jason didn't need my money. He needed me to be small. 2 weeks later, I attended an open house. Not the one Jason wanted, a different one, 3 blocks away, similar layout. It was sunny. Old Bones' new kitchen. A woman in her 70s was selling it because her daughter had moved to Florida and didn't want the fuss. She had blue eyes and wore a cardigan with a brooch shaped like a dragonfly. Her name was Ethel. She reminded me of the women who used to bring bundt cakes to school staff meetings. We had tea. She told me about her sewing group. I told her about Harold, about Jason, about the way some children grow bigger, while others just grow louder. Before I left, she said, "Dignity is the most expensive thing to lose." I went home, opened my recipe binder, and added a new line to the list. Bought a house. Didn't tell him. Let's see who feels small now. It was the start of summer when Jason called again. "You doing okay, Mom? You've been kind of quiet lately." I said I was just resting, doing puzzles, enjoying the quiet. He didn't ask what kind of puzzles. Good, because I was putting together something big, piece by piece. The brownstone closed on a Tuesday. Cash. No financing. No fuss. I signed with a pen Harold gave me on our 20th anniversary. Still smooth, still heavy, and took the keys without ceremony. The agent asked if I was planning to rent it out, flip it, or maybe downsize into something more walkable. I smiled and said, "No, I'm just holding it. For now." He looked confused. I didn't explain. The next day, I sat on the back steps of the brownstone with a cup of weak instant coffee. The yard was overgrown, the bricks chipped in places, and the fence leaned like it had secrets. It was beautiful, not because of what it was, but because no one else knew what it meant. Jason had spent his life accumulating things to prove his worth: watches, properties, event photos with people whose names he couldn't pronounce. But he never understood that power doesn't come from what you hold. It comes from what you can walk away from. Lillian posted a photo from their fundraiser that weekend. Her in a gold dress, holding a glass of something bubbly, smiling in that tight-lipped way of women who married for legacy. Jason stood next to her, hand around her waist, eyes somewhere else. The caption read, "Thank you to our donors and supporters for helping us push for clean, equitable urban futures." I clicked like, then muted her account. For good. By August, the brownstone was cleaned out. I hired a pair of older guys from church who did handyman work on the side. Retired Navy men. They fixed the back door, resealed the windows, painted over water stains. One of them, James, had eyes like slate and a laugh like a cracked violin. He reminded me of Harold in all the best ways. Not in how he looked, but in how he listened. I didn't tell him the full story, just enough that it had something to do with my son, that I wasn't angry, just done. He didn't ask more. He just said, people forget their roots, but old houses, they remember everything. The first time Jason came by unannounced, it was to ask for money. Again, he rang my doorbell in Rockville like it owed him something. I buzzed him up and found him in the hallway, tapping his phone like a surgeon waiting for the nurse to arrive. Mom, do you have a minute? I do. You want tea or coffee? Neither, actually. Just, look, the Logan Circle deal's falling apart. We're short by, like, 30. I know it's a lot, but if you could wire it today, I can make it back to you by... I let him talk, watched the way his mouth moved, fast and sure, like it always had, like mine never mattered. When he finished, I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and pulled out a loaf of banana bread I'd baked the day before. I handed him a slice, no napkin. He stared at it like it was a dead fish. Mom, you know, Harold used to say the same thing, that it was always just 30 more. Just one more loan, just one more favor. This is different. It's business. I tilted my head. Is it because I've been running a business too, lately? He frowned. What do you mean? I smiled. Real estate. I bought a brownstone. That shut him up. What? When? A few months ago. Off Logan. Cash. He laughed, short, sharp. You're joking. I'm not. I could see the calculations behind his eyes. What was it worth? Was it near the one he wanted? Could it be leveraged? Wait, are you flipping it? No. So what are you doing with it? Holding it. He squinted. For what? For peace of mind. Jason didn't ask me for money again, but he started calling more, inviting me to things, checking in. He even brought Lillian around once. She made a show of complimenting my sweater, then asked if I still drove that adorable little Nissan. I said, yes. It gets me where I need to go. That's all that matters, I guess. She replied, sipping her oat milk latte like she was auditioning for sympathy. What they didn't know, the brownstone he was after, the one he'd been chasing for 6 months, it wasn't just near mine. It backed right into it. I found the listing online, a mirrored floor plan. Same developer, different lot, but mine had better bones, a stronger foundation. I'd had the basement sealed, new pipes, the works. I made a call, quiet, careful, and made an offer, not on Jason's property, but on the adjacent lot, the one next to both. It was a tear down, an eyesore, but if you controlled it, you controlled everything around it. By December, I owned 3 lots on that street. Still no renters, no developers, just space. And silence. Jason didn't know yet, but he would. Christmas came and went without invitation. I mailed a card. Nothing fancy, just my name. No return address. A week later, he called, "We missed you this year." I let the silence sit. Then I said, "No, you didn't." January brought snow and paperwork, zoning meetings, permit applications, renovation blueprints. Not for the brownstone, for the lot. The teardown? I wasn't tearing it down. I was turning it into a community center. There's something funny about DC real estate. No one cares what you build, as long as you say it's for the community. And I meant it, too. The local librarian had lost her event space. The food bank needed a prep kitchen. A yoga teacher I met at Trader Joe's was looking for a studio she could afford. I wasn't just building walls. I was making space for people who made room for others. Jason found out in March. Lillian had driven by and seen the sign. Future Site. The Wren Collective for women who stayed and women who left. I got the call that night. What the hell is this? A gift to the neighborhood. Mom, you can't just. That lot was supposed to. I have investors. I have plans. So, do I? He laughed again, meaner this time. You seriously think people are going to show up to your little clubhouse? I said nothing, because you don't argue with people who think kindness is weakness. By spring, the Wren Collective was underway. Old wood, sanded by hand, a porch swing, a donation, library out front, a mural of women with clasped hands and tired eyes. Ethel came by with her sewing group. James donated tools. People brought books, meals, stories. They said thank you. They stayed for tea. Not one asked who my son was. Not one cared. One afternoon, as I arranged flowers in the foyer, I saw Jason through the front window, just standing across the street, arms crossed, staring. He didn't knock. He just stood there, trying to understand how I'd become someone who no longer needed him. I placed the vase on the windowsill, smiled, then turned and walked away. Jason didn't call again for 3 months after the brownstone incident. Not after I told him I was just holding it. Not after he found out I had plans for the lot next door. Not after Lillian saw the sign that read, "Coming soon, the Wren Collective, a place for women who stayed and women who left." I hadn't expected gratitude, but I was curious to see how long silence could stretch before it became its own kind of scream. Turns out, about 86 days. The first email came in mid-March. Subject line, just checking in. 3 short lines. Hey Mom, just wanted to see how you're doing. Let me know if you need anything. Also, Hudson chewed through the patio furniture. Again, hope all's well. J. No mention of the building, or the mural I'd commissioned, or the women's gathering I'd hosted the week before. Just patio furniture. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, but because I didn't need to anymore. You'd think revenge would feel like champagne. Fizzy, dramatic, a rush. But this was warm tea. Calm, slow, a quiet pleasure that settled deep in the bones. I spent the rest of that spring building not walls, but rooms with warm lighting and soft chairs, rooms with long tables for shared dinners, wide windows that opened fully, hardwood floors sanded by hand. A woman named Shireen, who had fled a controlling husband after 18 years of marriage, offered to paint one of the rooms. She chose soft yellows and sea glass green. Colors that forgive you, she said. Another woman, Lucinda, ran a second-hand store and donated books. She brought 20 boxes of them, stacked high in the back of her minivan. I spent 2 afternoons sorting through them, labeling shelves. Grief, starting over, laughter, rage. We didn't organize alphabetically. We organized emotionally. The first official event at the Wren Collective was a dinner. I called it Wednesday Welcome. Potluck style. No pressure. That night, 27 women came. Some brought cookies. Others brought stories. A few brought nothing but silence. And that was welcome, too. Camille, the the one with the leopard print scarf and the best sangria recipe on the East Coast, raised a glass and toasted to whatever this place becomes. No one clapped. They just nodded, because when you've gone unheard for years, silence means more than applause. I wasn't the boss. I was the keeper of keys. That's what they started calling me. Marlene, keeper of keys. We made our own rules. No one tells anyone to smile. You can talk or sit in silence. Both are healing. You can be angry here. You can be soft. We don't judge tears or joy. No one gets to ask, what did you do to deserve it? I still lived in my small condo in Rockville, but every day I took the bus to the Wren. The bus driver, a man named Otis, started calling me boss lady. I liked it better than mom. He asked once what I did there. I said, I make space for women who forgot they deserved space. He nodded like he understood more than I thought. One Wednesday, I stayed late after dinner. It had rained. The building smelled like lavender and steamed rice and wet cement. I was wiping down the counters when I heard the front door creak. I turned. There he was, Jason, standing just inside the doorway, holding an umbrella and looking like someone who'd entered the wrong church. Hi, he said. Hi. He looked around, at the bookshelf, at the mural of the outstretched wings, at the bulletin board full of flyers, classes, therapy sessions, poetry nights. This is not what I expected, he said. I nodded. Yeah, it's better. He didn't argue, didn't apologize either, but he did ask, can we talk? I poured him tea, not because I forgave him, because I had boundaries and teacups. We sat on the couch in the reading room. I watched him fidget with the tag on a throw pillow. I didn't know, he finally said. I raised an eyebrow. Didn't know what? That it mattered this much to you. I waited. I guess I always thought you were comfortable, that you liked keeping things simple. That's how you saw me, because it was convenient. His mouth twitched. You're mad. No, I was mad. Now I'm free. He stayed for 20 minutes, talked mostly about Hudson, about the market, about how Lillian might go back to school for a design certificate. I didn't ask why he came, and he didn't ask what I wanted. When he left, he paused at the door. Is this your revenge? He asked. I thought for a moment. No, I said, this is my healing. The revenge was silence. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Good night, Jason. And then I locked the door behind him, not to keep him out, but to keep myself in. That week, something changed in me. Like a final thread had been cut. I walked differently, not lighter, firmer. I began adding names to the donor wall in the back hallway. Quiet women who had given $10, $50, homemade jams, paintings, linens. We called it the Wall of Worth. Camille added her mother's name. Shireen added her grandmother's. I added mine. Marlene Elizabeth Hart. For the girl who stayed quiet too long. We began to expand. Not physically. Emotionally. Women started bringing their daughters. Their neighbors. A retired piano teacher started free lessons on Saturdays. One woman hosted a divorce cake day, where instead of crying, we ate chocolate ganache and watched movies with women who survived things. We held space for one another. And somehow, in the middle of it all, I became visible again. Jason sent another email. Subject: about the Logan Circle project. Mom, the buyers backed out. I'm underwater on it now. I need to liquidate or find someone to take the loan. Just thought I'd let you know before I have to make the call. Hope you're okay. Jason asterisk. I didn't respond. Not because I wanted to punish him, but because I was no longer in the business of catching men who fall from ladders they built too fast. 2 weeks later, the property hit the market, discounted, reduced, desperate. The women joked about it, called it Karma Square. Camille said, we should buy it and turn it into a daycare for women going back to work. We laughed, but we didn't, because we already had enough. One day, a woman named Daria walked in. She was in her early 30s, eyes rimmed with exhaustion, a tattered folder clutched to her chest. I was told, my mom said, you might be able to help. I guided her inside, made her tea, sat her in the sunniest chair. She handed me the folder. Inside, a lease agreement, poorly written, signed by Jason. He had leased her a unit in one of his older buildings, promised renovation in progress, and then ghosted her when the ceiling collapsed from water damage. She'd spent her last paycheck fixing the plumbing, and now she was 1 month from eviction. She didn't know who I was, but her mother had said my name like a password. We gave her a room upstairs for 30 days. No charge, just a place to breathe. Shireen donated bedding. Lucinda brought books. Camille cooked a stew that could raise the dead. Daria cried the second night, not from sadness, from being seen. A week later, she came downstairs with a tray of muffins and a job application. I'm ready to give again. She said, that's what we do here. We give from the part that grew back. Jason showed up once more. Not at the Wren. At my condo. I was on the balcony, trimming the potted herbs. He walked up the stairs like someone unsure whether the door would open. Hey, he said. Hey. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I waited. I think I took you for granted. And I know it's late. But it's not late, I said. It's just no longer necessary. His face folded. What does that mean? I've forgiven you, I said, but I've also released you. You're no longer the sun I orbit. He stood there for a moment, then nodded and left. That was the last time I saw him in person. We still exchange holiday cards, but they arrive like polite ghosts. No warmth, just acknowledgement. And that's fine. The Wren Collective celebrated its 1-year anniversary with a potluck and a jazz trio. Women wore sequins and soft shoes. There was no speech, no ceremony, just laughter. We added a new plaque on the wall of worth. We are not what we were told we had to be. We are what we chose when no one was watching. Now, every Wednesday, the tea kettle whistles at 4:45 sharp. The door is never locked. The rooms are full of chairs with no backs turned. Sometimes we write letters to ourselves. Other times we plant bulbs. We trust they'll bloom, even if we're not around to see it. I still live in my condo, still take the bus, still wear cardigans and eat too much toast. But I am no longer a mother who waits, or a woman who asks permission. I am the keeper of keys. I thought revenge would be louder, but it turns out the sweetest justice is this: a room full of women who call me by name, a garden that grows even in winter, a son who finally understood, too late, that respect cannot be borrowed. And me? I am just Marlene now, not his mother, not their burden, just a woman who once got quiet and built a kingdom in the silence.